Hello everybody, Shrouded Hand here. Time once again to look at some completely normal looking photographs. If you haven't seen the other videos in this series, then don't worry, you can view them in any order. The idea is we look at some photos that appear pretty innocent but actually have sinister backstories. So let's just jump right in. This is a selfie taken by Anne Faber. She'd sent it to her boyfriend to show him how much she was enjoying the weather. On September the 29th, 2017, Anne Faber set off from her home in Utrecht, Netherlands to go for a solo bike ride. It was not far into her journey that she snapped this picture, hood up, caught in the rain, making a peace sign towards the camera with a comical expression on her face. Later that day, Anne failed to return home and her boyfriend started to worry. He hadn't heard from her since she'd sent him that photo. As the hours wound on and Anne still failed to appear, she was reported missing and a manhunt was initiated. Police were able to track her previous movements from her phone signal. The selfie was taken at around 6:50 p.m. at this crossroads. After that, she had continued along cycle route 115802. At around 7:30, as she neared the village of Den Dolder, the signal was lost. On the 3rd of October, a television appeal was made and a member of public reported that they'd found a woman's jacket in woodlands near the village of Hoesterheide. I'm probably saying this wrong, I apologise. This was some distance south of where Anne's phone signal had cut out. Police searched the area and found even more of Anne's clothing in the same woodland. They tested her jacket and they discovered DNA belonging to someone that Anne didn't know. A man who you'd never want to meet on a lone cycle trip. This man was Michael Panhuis. In 2010, Michael had been convicted for raping 2 underage girls and he was sentenced to 12 years imprisonment. However, just 7 years into his sentence, he was transferred to the Utrecht psychiatric facility. Now, in the Netherlands they have a program where certain prisoners are able to be gradually reintroduced to society. It happens towards the end of their sentences. They may be moved to a lower security prison and given various freedoms like being allowed to visit family members on weekends. Usually this happens around 18 months before the end of their sentence, but because Michael Panhuis was eligible for conditional release, he was allowed to start this program early. At the Utrecht facility, he had to undergo various psychiatric treatments and evaluations, but he was also given certain freedoms. Freedoms like being allowed to leave the facility unescorted. Panhuis was taken in for questioning and eventually he revealed all. On the day of Anne's disappearance, Panhuis had gone out on one of his unsupervised outings. He'd stolen a scooter and he was riding around looking for houses to burgle. The cycle route that Anne was following passes very close to the psychiatric facility that Panhuis was staying at. At some point along the way, Panhuis crashed into Anne. It's not known if he'd done this on purpose, but he would later confess that out of anger he then dragged Anne off the cycle path and into nearby woods where he raped her. He claims that he'd planned to let her go after that, but when she tried calling out to a passing cyclist, he'd become enraged and slit her throat. He stashed her body in the woods, then later on he came back and moved her body north to a nature reserve in Zeewolde. Using this information, police were finally able to locate Anne's body and give the family some sort of closure on what had happened to her. The case caused a lot of controversy in the media. Many questions were raised about why Panhuis had been allowed to leave the facility alone. Sadly for Anne Faber and her family, this could have been an easily avoidable tragedy. It was discovered that just a few months before Anne's murder, Panhuis had assaulted 3 members of staff at the facility, and yet he was still psychiatrically evaluated as being safe to wander the streets unescorted. The next photo comes from Ipiranga in Brazil. It was taken on August the 3rd, 2023, and it shows a 7-year-old boy named Arthur Emmanuel Bittencourt. He seems pretty happy. He's giving a thumbs up to the camera, and I'm sure any of you who have played in a sandpit or on the beach as a child will know the carefree joy that comes from half burying yourself in the sand like that. The only problem is, this wasn't sand, it was limestone powder on a construction site. The construction site was on his family's property, which probably explains why he'd decided to play in it. Limestone powder can be pretty toxic. Usually when people handle it, they wear some sort of protective equipment. Moving it around can cause tiny particles of silica to billow into the air, which when inhaled can cause breathing problems. It seems that Arthur had a severe reaction to the dust. Moments after this photo was taken, he began to choke and eventually fell unconscious. He was rushed to the hospital, but sadly pronounced dead on arrival. The photo was shared to Facebook by devastated family members. Alongside it they wrote, "This photo was the last and taken a few minutes before his tragic death, caused by inhaling limestone while playing. The memories I have of you, my dear child, will always be the best. Our gratitude to God for putting Arthur in our life, a treasure who stayed with us for 7 years, 1 month and 10 days. This photograph shows a group of boys taking a dip in the pond of the Gundanjanaya Swami temple, which is in the village of Ravgodlu in Bangalore, India. The boys were part of the National Cadet Corps, the youth cadets of the Indian Armed Forces. One morning in September 2017, the boys had travelled to the temple and they'd spent the morning tidying it. Behind the temple is a large pool, and when they were done cleaning, they decided to take a dip to cool off. When they got out of the pool, they'd failed to notice that one of their friends, Vishwas, was missing. Around an hour later, one of the boys was looking through the pictures on his phone when he spotted something in that pool selfie. In the background, the top of Vishwas's head can be seen. He clearly seems to be having difficulties and nobody in the photo noticed. The boy showed the picture to his unit chief and they rushed to the pool, and there they found Vishwas, drowned, floating in the water. Vishwas's family were understandably distraught. They took his body and they sat with it outside the college that was responsible for taking the boys on the trip to the temple. It was a way of protesting what they saw as negligent behaviour on behalf of the staff. Allegedly, they'd allowed the boys to jump into the 15-foot deep pool, even though there were signs up telling people not to swim in it. This photo, among others, also prompted a campaign from the state government of Karnataka, not about the dangers of swimming, but on the dangers of selfies. Apparently, India has a strange selfie death problem. According to this site, about half of the 259 reported selfie deaths and accidents between 2011 and 2017 occurred in India. The reason for this is unclear, but it led to a number of social media campaigns aimed at Indian youths, warning them about the dangers of what became known as killfies, killer selfies. In Mumbai, they even installed signs declaring certain areas as no selfie zones due to the amount of people taking crazy risks to get the perfect selfie. One theory about this high amount of Indian killfies may be because they seem to prefer group selfies. When everyone's looking at the camera, they don't spot the dangers going on behind them. Vishwas's last photo is a perfect example of this happening. The next photo is another selfie. This was taken in Saskatchewan, Canada. Two friends smiling for the camera before going out for the night. On the left is Cheyenne Antoine, on the right is Brittany Gargle. The picture was taken on the 25th of March 2015 and uploaded to Facebook. The following morning, Cheyenne posted on Brittany's Facebook page, saying, "Where are you? Haven't heard from you. Hope you made it home safe." The two of them, it seems, had gone out and gotten drunk, but only Cheyenne had made it home. About 6 hours after the photo was taken, a man was walking along the road near to the Saskatoon West landfill site, and he found a girl lying by the side of the road. She was icy cold and she was completely unconscious. An ambulance was called and she was rushed to the hospital, but all attempts to resuscitate her failed and she died in hospital. Police were initially unable to identify the girl, but she had a number of distinctive tattoos. They posted pictures of her tattoos online to see if anyone recognised her, and they had a few responses from her friends. As you probably guessed, the dead girl was Brittany Gargle. A number of people who recognised her tattoo were able to confirm her identity. An examination of Brittany's corpse revealed that she died of strangulation. A belt had been found lying next to her body, and by comparing the pattern of the belt to the marks on Brittany's neck, it confirmed that this belt had been used to strangle her. The only real lead they had was Cheyenne Antoine. It seemed that she was the last person to see Brittany alive. Cheyenne told police that the two of them had gone to a few bars. Then Brittany had met some guy in the last bar and she'd gone home with him. This story didn't really add up. Police checked the CCTV of the bars that Cheyenne said they'd gone to, and they couldn't see any sign of the girls being there. Cheyenne's story then changed. Now she says she and Brittany had gone to a house party where they'd got into a drug-fueled argument with two men. Cheyenne says that she went to use the bathroom, and when she returned, Brittany was lying dead on the mattress. These same men then forced Cheyenne to help them dispose of her body. Police suspected that this story was false too, but there wasn't enough evidence to discount it completely. They kept their eye on Cheyenne, but she seemed unwilling to provide any more information, so the case went cold for a while. Some weeks later, they received a tip from Cheyenne's aunt. According to this aunt, on the night of Brittany's killing, Cheyenne had returned home in a panicked, drunken state. She then confessed to her aunt that she'd gotten into a fight with Brittany and had strangled her to death. It seemed like the break that the police needed, but when questioned again, Cheyenne denied ever having said that to her aunt. It was really one person's word against another, with no real physical evidence that could tie Cheyenne to Brittany's death. For a further 2 years, police investigated the case. They strongly suspected Cheyenne of being the murderer, but they were never able to find concrete proof. Then, in 2017, they spotted something in one of Cheyenne's Facebook posts. It was in the selfie that was posted a few hours before Brittany died. It was something that's very easy to miss. The belt that Cheyenne is wearing in the photo is the same belt that was used to kill Brittany Gargle. With this key piece of evidence, Cheyenne eventually confessed. She claims that she'd had no memory of the actual killing. She says the two of them did go to a house party, and there they'd drank alcohol and consumed various drugs. At some point they'd gotten into an argument about a cell phone, but then Cheyenne claims that she's blacked out and has no memory of the following events. The next memory she has is of waking up in the morning knowing that she'd done something terrible but not knowing exactly what it was. This fairly vague confession, along with the photograph and the fact that Cheyenne had attempted to cover her tracks by continually changing her story, was enough to charge her with second-degree murder. However, in court she pleaded guilty to the lesser charge of manslaughter, and she was sentenced to just 7 years in prison. As far as final photographs go, this one is fairly unique. Not only does it show the killer and her victim, but also the murder weapon itself. So finally, let's look at this photo. It shows some snow, a pond, and a set of footprints. These are the footprints of a 4-year-old named Naomi Delgado. You can see where she stopped to play in the snow before continuing onwards towards the pond. You can also see there are no footprints coming back. Late January 2015, Naomi and her family had visited the Loveland Sports Park in Colorado. They were visiting for soccer practice. Naomi was playing in a nearby playground area. At some point, her father lost sight of her, and when he searched around, he found these footprints heading out onto the ice of a nearby frozen pond. Tragically, Naomi had fallen through the ice before anyone had even noticed that she was gone. If we look at the pond from a different angle, we can see that the footprints were made on the snow that had covered the frozen pond itself. The circular area in the middle is just where it had started to thaw and where the ice was at its thinnest. A look at the park in the summer shows the shape of the pond when it's not frozen. It also shows how close it is to the playground. After Naomi's death, a number of questions were raised about the safety of the park. One local resident wrote on Facebook, "The pond is literally a couple of steps from the playground. It's extremely difficult to watch multiple toddlers and preschoolers at that park, as there are pillars and other obstructions in the way of the view. I moved here 3.5 years ago and have been saying that the pond is a disaster waiting to happen since the beginning." Naomi's father dragged her body from the water. A 911 dispatcher gave him CPR instructions over the phone as they sent an ambulance to the park. Paramedics then tried to revive her in the ambulance, but sadly it was too late and Naomi died from a combination of drowning and hypothermia. After this incident, there was talk of putting a fence up around the pond. One article mentions someone from the Parks and Recreation Department who admitted that fencing the pond had been an issue for many parents since the park opened in 2006, and that fencing the pond and other bodies of water at public parks would be re-evaluated pending the review of the Loveland police report. Sadly for Naomi's family, no amount of safety measures could change what had already happened. The haunting image of these final footsteps serve as a somber reminder how quickly childlike play can turn to unimaginable tragedy. So thank you for watching the video. As I said at the beginning, this is part of a series on innocent looking photos with dark backstories, so if you haven't seen the others, I'll put a playlist at the end and you can go check them out if you feel like it. Thank you very much to everyone who is supporting the channel, it's highly appreciated. I wouldn't be able to cover these sort of topics without your help, so thank you. Until next time, goodbye.